Thanks for tuning in to another unfiltered episode. Today, we are going to tackle a controversial topic. Let's have a grown up conversation about billionaires, about politicians, about predators, and about what happens when all three occupy the same penthouse. We're going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, not the headlines, not the memes, but the machine. The dark, sophisticated, power protecting machine that enabled one man to commit unspeakable crimes in plain sight and still somehow take his secrets to the grave. They want us to forget. They want us to move on. They've sealed the files, buried the names, and offered us blank pages as transparency. But we're not buying it because this isn't just about Epstein. It's about the government's favorite new slogan. There's nothing to see here. Please disperse. Move on. But we're going to spend this podcast episode talking about what isn't being talked about. We'll examine the files, the names, the silence, and the system working overtime to protect anyone with a net worth high enough to buy a small country or a federal judge. In this episode, we're opening the vault, metaphorically at least, and we're asking, what's in those Epstein files? And who's being protected? And what does it say about the world we live in that the truth is too dangerous to publish? Jeffrey Epstein was a wealthy, well-connected predator who somehow operated one of the most prolific sex trafficking rings this country has ever seen, right under the noses of the rich, the powerful, and the allegedly respectable. He owned a jet. He owned an island. He owned a townhouse in Manhattan that could fit a minor league baseball team in it. And apparently, he owned silence, bought and paid for with favors, flights, and stacks of cold, hard cash. Let's be clear. He abused girls, underage girls, for years. He recruited them, he trafficked them, and he traded them like property. And he wasn't alone. This wasn't some rogue pervert operating out of a van. This was a network. And like all networks, it had connections to celebrities, to scientists, to royalty, and even to presidents. I'm Hendrell Remus, and this is Politics Unfiltered. First, before we hop into it, I want to say if you are subscribed to the podcast, thank you for tuning in week after week. If you are not subscribed to the podcast, make sure you like, comment, share, and definitely subscribe so that we can continue to grow together. If you have anything that you'd like for us to focus on as a topic of this podcast, make sure that you drop it in the comments or shoot us an email. Let's hop into it. We're talking about Jeffrey Epstein today, and a lot of people are probably wondering, I keep hearing this name, Jeffrey Epstein, but who the hell is Jeffrey Epstein? Now, who really is this guy? Well, Jeffrey Epstein was officially, professionally a financier, which is rich people code for no one really knows what the hell he did. But somehow, he was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Jeffrey Epstein was more than a billionaire, more than a financier. He was the centerpiece of what many believe was a globe-spanning sex trafficking operation involving minors, girls as young as 14. And he wasn't working alone. His inner circle was stoked with enablers. Ghislaine Maxwell, who've been sentenced to prison time, most notably, but also secretaries, pilots, house managers, recruiters, and powerful friends who looked the other way. He owned private jets. I mentioned earlier he owned a private island. He owned a mansion in Manhattan, a ranch in New Mexico, and a sprawling social web that included celebrities, scientists, heads of states, and yes, presidents. And in all of these places and with all of these people, there's all of this speculation that he caused an enormous amount of pain to so many young women. But no matter what, he was finally arrested. He was indicted, and before trial, he died. They said it was suicide, but the cameras malfunctioned, so we'll never really know. The guards were asleep, the evidence was sketchy, and just like that, the one man who could connect the dots was gone. Let's be real. His first brush with justice was less conviction and more country club inconvenience. He got 13 months for child trafficking, not prison, but work release, which is basically jail's version of a lunch break. He was allowed during that first sentencing that this pervert had received, he was allowed to leave 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, to go to his office, to go to the gym, hell, probably even to brunch. And legend has it, while he was out on work release, he was still sexually assaulting young women, sex trafficking young women. And that sweetheart deal, when he first went to jail, that deal was brokered by a federal prosecutor who would go on to become Trump's Secretary of Labor during his first term. Neat little circle, right? In 2019, Epstein was arrested again on new federal charges. This time, people thought, finally, this guy is going to be held accountable. There's going to be some justice for the victims. The victims might get justice finally. The public might get answers. But instead, we got a corpse. Because just weeks later, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell. The cameras malfunctioned, the guards were asleep, and the coroner shrugged like a waiter who dropped your soup and said, shit happens. But let's be honest. If that were an episode of CSI, it wouldn't make it past the pilot. Let's talk about the real Pandora's box. The Epstein files. Hundreds of pages of flight logs, of financial records, of visitor logs, depositions, witness statements, bank wires, and this alleged client list. Now, according to the Department of Justice, there is no client list. Apparently, Epstein was a multi-millionaire who trafficked dozens of girls over decades, but no one ever used his services. Think of it like a luxury hotel where nobody ever checks in. Sure. What has been released, though, includes some very interesting names, most notably a couple of presidents, Democrat and Republican, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump. Folks are even saying that Naomi Campbell and Stephen Hawkins were a part of this long list of folks. And they wonder why people really want to see this client list, because there's so much speculation. There's so many rumors, but there's only really one way to clear it up. Show us the list. You know, after these names have come out, some of those folks have denied wrongdoing. Some deny ever even meeting him. Some just hire lawyers and pray no one asks questions. Listen to what Donald Trump had to say.
He was a fixture in Palm Beach. I had a falling out with him a long time ago. I don't think I've spoken to him for 15 years. I wasn't a fan. I was not, a long time ago. I'd say maybe 15 years. I was not a fan of his, that I can tell you. Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
But a lot of these photos and pictures tell a different story. But what about the names we haven't seen? What about the sealed depositions? What about the folks who are still hiding in the shadows, hoping that they're not outed? What about the blanked out lines and the ongoing investigation that never quite goes anywhere? In early 2025, Trump's Attorney General, Pam Bondi, released what she called the first phase of declassified Epstein files. And this was all brought on because leading up to the 2024 election, Donald Trump was out on the campaign trail promising that, he was going to release the Epstein files. All of these guys were on podcasts all across the country, on conservative radio, on conservative news all across the country, demanding that the files be released and talking about how during Trump's next term, he would release the files. And he was making that promise. The Epstein files need to come out. Supposedly, they were waiting for the same 341 pages that we were waiting for. Sounded quite impressive. Except most of them were either duplicate pages, many were pages that were already public, and several, and I kid you not, were literally blank pages of paper in this 341 pages. Imagine demanding answers and being handed a coloring book with no crayons. Pam Bundy then held a press conference and said, and I quote, "There's nothing else to release."
First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
Translation: we looked under the rug. There was nothing there but dust and a few of our powerful friends. Look, folks, we know from journalists, from court records, from whistleblowers, these files are real. They contain guest lists, transaction histories, private flight records, Ghislaine Maxwell's sealed testimony, but we're not allowed to see them because the government says doing so might violate privacy. Privacy for who? The survivors? Or the powerful men who shared Epstein's jet like it was an Uber pool? Trump is demanding the files be released. That's his new thing now. He wants the files released all of a sudden. Yes, that Trump, President Donald Trump, the one who once called Epstein a terrific guy, the one whose own name appears at least in the flight logs, the one whose former chief of staff now says the files include people you wouldn't believe. So he's demanding transparency from an agency he controls, but a case he might be in. That's a crazy scenario to be in this country. The president controls the agency overseeing the case. No one knows if he's actually in the case or not. And he's going around the country acting as if he wants the records released so badly, or some version of the records released. That's like robbing a bank and then volunteering to help the police investigate. I just want answers, officer. And yet, mega supporters, there's a big rift in this mega movement right now because mega supporters are really demanding the files. And for the first time, we are seeing them turn their back or turn away on Donald Trump over this issue. It's one of those things that they're forcing his hands on. But they're not alone. Progressives are demanding the files. Moderates are sipping coffee nervously, waiting to see if their favorite actor's name pops up. Folks, if you're listening to this podcast, this should be a unifying moment. This isn't about guilt by association. Flying on a jet doesn't make you a criminal. But when someone takes 20 flights, visits the island, and shows up in sealed depositions, maybe, just maybe, we should be allowed to ask questions. We live in a country where you need ID to buy Sudafed, but you don't need to explain why your name appears 15 times in a sex trafficker's logbook. That's not justice. That's a broken system, one that treats the powerful like porcelain and the powerless like statistics. Let's say tomorrow, boom, everything's unsealed. What happens? Some careers end, some headlines explode, some PR teams quit on the spot, and for a moment, just a moment, We might believe that accountability still matters, but let's be real. Most people on that list, they'll lawyer up. They'll issue powerful statements. They'll blame fake news, and they'll keep cashing checks. Their checks won't stop. Their careers won't stop. They'll keep going. Because in America, if you're rich enough, your sins are just quirks. This story isn't about Epstein anymore. He's dead. He's gone. It's about a system that protects itself. It's about survivors still waiting for justice while billionaires sip martinis and say, I don't recall. I don't remember him. We weren't that close. And it's about us, what we tolerate, what we excuse, what we forget. Because silence isn't neutral. It's a choice. And choosing to let this die in darkness is how the next Epstein rises in the light. If there's no client list, release the files. If there is a client list, release the files. Because either way, the truth belongs to the public, not in the DOJ, not to the billionaires, not to the politicians playing hot potato with accountability. It belongs to us. So, to the survivors, if you happen to hear this podcast, I want you to know that we see you. We believe you. And we won't let your stories be redacted like those pages. Justice delayed is justice denied. And in this case, it's been delayed for far too damn long. I'll leave you with this. The Epstein files must be released. The Epstein files must be released. Not just for accountability, but for integrity. Not just for the victims, but for the nation. If the names inside are innocent, fine. Let the truth clear them. If the names inside are guilty, let justice be served, no matter how high their office or how vast their fortune. Because secrecy only protects predators. Because silence is only complicity. And because justice, real justice, doesn't hide in the shadows. And to everyone still pretending the system is working, you might want to double check your names, not in the next release that comes from the DOJ. I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit me up on social media at Hendrell Remus, and let's keep this conversation unfiltered. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, truth matters, people matter, and silence is never neutral. Until next time, stay informed, stay critical, and never stop asking the hard questions. This is Politics Unfiltered, and I'm out.